From his mother.
Yeah,
From his mother. Oh, another thing, Grandma Gladys's parents were Baptists. They called them hard shell Baptists.
Yeah.
That means, I said, what does that mean? She means, that's a lot of brimstone.
Oh. Oh. Oh, that is good.
So, I just want to get it straight, Grandma, going over to your family. Your father was William Stewart McHenry,
Mm-hmm.
and he spelled it S-T-U-A-R-T?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your mother was Mary Hogan, and I have her going 1868 to 1950. That'd be about right?
I think 1950 is right, but I never really knew. Grace would know. If anybody knows, she would know.
Do you know where she was born?
My mother?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess she was born in New Richmond, around, or Stanton it was called, but New Richmond was our town. Stanton was the township, I guess.
Stanton Township.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know where her husband, I'm sure, was born in Ireland, but, I never found out anything more about him. I think
You mean her father?
My mother's father, yes.
Philip Hogan.
Philip Hogan.
On his gravestone it says that he was born in County Kilkenny, Ireland.
Oh, you have it, huh?
That's
what year?
1822.
1820. I guess he was probably a lot older than my grandmother.
He would be, I think, 14 years older than her.
Yeah, I think he was.
But he died 1884, so that's, that's well before you came.
Oh, yes.
So you didn't know him.
Must have been well before my mother and father were married, too.
Do you know what year your mother and father got married?
Yes, June 2nd, 1891. And that's the day their one and only son died, too, except years later.
Mm-hmm. Now, Catherine Kavanaugh was your grandmother on your mother's side?
Yes.
And you did know her?
Oh, very well. She was very dear to us.
Uh-huh.
My grandmother Hogan, she was the lady of the town of the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
When Catherine Hogan rode up, well, everybody was paying attention. She never appeared to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But she was, what would I say, rather charming. She was a very loving grandmother, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody doted on her. She was a little commanding. She had 9 children, and I only knew 3 of the 3 boys, and they died. How many died or young? She had 5 left. What did I say? She had 9. So there were 3. At least 3 died. 3 or 4 died. And then she adopted 2 children from that New York story. There's a movie on that about how those how those New York people collected a carload of people and sent them into the country and went around to get people to adopt them. Those well-to-do farmers. They had great big houses, my grandmother had, I think, 6 bedrooms at least in their house. And I remember a neighbor there, I think they had more bedrooms than that. All the houses were big because they had such large families. And most of the families adopted two children, and most of those, I would say half of those children were not very not promising, but they got along, but they were not bright or outstanding in any way.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother adopted a boy and a girl. Well, the boy always ran away. When he got big enough to run, he'd run away, and they were always trying to catch him. And the girl never grew much. She's very short, and she loved to sing and dance.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to wonder if she came from stage people or people that.
Mm-hmm.
And she could clown quite a bit. She was quite witty, but she's very short. And really, they adopted those children more or less, ready them to help. Around the men wanted the boys to help. And then there was one, Johnny Newell. He was kind of half-witted, but he could do chores. He could milk cows, and he could. There weren't any of them outstanding.
Mm-hmm. They all kind of struggled along.
Yes, and they had some. Either they were. Most of them weren't too bright, as far as I can remember. They got along. They weren't. I can't say that any of them I ever knew were mentally inept, but they weren't outstanding.
Now you remember
but they had good homes. They got good homes. They had a good house to live in, plenty of food and clothes, and went to school.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your grandmother's house?
Oh yes.
And you'd go over there a lot?
Oh, did you? You've seen pictures of it, I can show you.
Oh yeah,
I got a
I
lot.
suppose. In fact, is it still up there? We may.
Yes.
I think we drove by.
Oh, we must have. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What was it like inside? Do you remember some of them?
Yes, I do. Of course, the thing I remember greatly was the staircase and sliding down the banister.
Oh.
They had a large dining room, and they always ate in the dining room, where they didn't eat in the kitchen.
Oh.
And my grandmother always kept at least one hired girl, and sometimes two. And of course, they kept hired men too.
Mm-hmm.
And they ate at a big, long table.
Mm-hmm.
I told you about my mother sitting there talking to her brothers. She adored those three brothers of hers.
Oh.
And when she said her girls were going to go to school, they were arguing with her that, or at least pointing out to her, not arguing especially, but discussing it. And so they adhered to Mamie's. Mamie was right. Her name was. They called her Mamie.
Your mother.
My mother.
Mamie.
Mamie, for Mary. She did all right. You see, they liked to have boys on farms up there, and we didn't. We weren't boys. No, my mother wouldn't let us be boys either.
At the time that we're talking about, were her sons, in other words, your uncles, helping out on her farm?
Oh, they were running it. Their father had died when they were quite young, and that's why she was so much the boss and the manager. They were all fairly young when he died, and so she just took over, and they were old enough, I guess, to do the work, and they just went along running a big farm. They had a big farm with big barns, and a great big place for pigs, and a great, what they called a milk house, where they kept the milk, and my uncle made butter in a great big churn, and they had a cream separator, and a big wood pile. I always remember the wood pile. They burned wood, and it had to be oak wood, because that throws more heat. And they have to prepare a year in advance so it would dry. And then it had to be all split in the lengths that would fit in the stove.
Did you go over there for holidays or?
Oh, yes.
Like
We
the-
went for Christmas.
Oh, what was that like? Christmas Eve? Or?
Oh, we went a day before Christmas, usually Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my father hired a man to come and take care of our farm, and we went to stay 3 or 4 days, or maybe a week when we went, because it was 17 miles, and we went in a sled, and that was the sled they used to fix Catherine and me. Catherine and I were, until Catherine was 6 years old, it was just the two of us. And so Christmas was coming, and we were all ready and made our presents and everything. And Christmas Eve we got ready, and we were always wrapped up nice and warm, and a good covering put in the front of the sled that we were in. We usually had a sleigh or a sled. It was kind of big. And on the floor in front, they put down blankets, and then they put us in there all bundled up with soapstones, you know. That's a stone that you heat.
Oh, you put it in the fireplace?
We put it in the stove and got it good and hot, and then put it in the bottom of the sled, and where our feet would be, and we were snug as bugs there.
Oh, yeah?
And rode the 7 miles to the town, and then we stopped in a little town because that was a treat too to get into the town. And usually that soapstone was a little cool by the time we got back, but it wasn't quite so far from my grandmother's from town. That was, I think that was only about 6 miles. Or see, we were 7. And we were about 15 miles or 17 miles from town, from my grandmother's. Well, then we always had oyster stew on Christmas Eve, and Uncle Ed would usually go to town. He was the oldest of the 3 boys, and he brought a whole gallon of oysters home.
Oh, gosh.
And we...
Now, where would they get oysters up there? They must have come from a long ways off.
I don't know, but they always had them. And we had oysters more often than we have them here, it seemed to me. And lots of milk, you know, to make them in. So that was we didn't eat meat on Christmas Eve. It was a holy day, or it was a day of fasting. So we all had a big oyster supper, New Year's Eve. And then the worst part was they put us to bed, but at 11 o'clock they woke us up and made us get up and get dressed and go to midnight mass.
Oh.
I didn't like that very well. I went. It was rather dramatic after you got there. I always remember that they had a priest that was rather dramatic, Father Rice. And I'm sure now when I look back, he was rather exceptional in the area, but he knew how to get along with the people. And I remember the Christmas Eve he came out quoting, what was it? Make me a child again just for tonight, that little poem. I used to know the beginning of it. See, how does it start? Well, anyhow, he came out dramatically, and I was sitting there cold, you know, because the church was kind of cold. And he came out and he preached he could preach a big sermon. And then we'd ride home and put us back to bed. Then we wanted to get up and see Santa Claus in the morning, so that we didn't want to stay in bed too late. Oh yeah, but Christmas was a great time. And we always got some nice gifts in our stockings. And my grandmother, I don't know how she stood it, because she'd been getting ready for, well, of course, as I said, she always had at least one hired girl. But she'd have a goose and a turkey, both. And she'd go to midnight mass, and then she was up early enough to get that stuff in the oven and going, and a big dinner. And then the Paddens used to come over with a sleigh load of, they had about 6 kids. And Betty, Betty's father, Phil, he was one of the older ones. And of course we had a great time. We used to play fox and goose. And the snow we had a big field back of the old log cabin. My grandfather and grandmother had a log house to start with on another part of the farm.
They had lived there before they had the house?
Yes. The house, I guess, was built while he was alive. It must have been, I suppose. You know, I don't even know that. But I think it must have been built before he died. But my grandmother's place was quite a place. We thought so. And I used to go there in the summer. When I got older, my mother used to send me out to help out my grandmother for a week or two. And I used to go, well, happily, you know, I didn't know any better. Catherine wouldn't go. She wasn't. She knew it was for work, but I didn't mind doing a little work. I made bread and did whatever to help with the dishes and things like that. But she always gave me money.
Oh.
And when I would be leaving, she'd give me money, and that was pretty nice. And she my uncles always treated me nice. I know what, we had a bread mixer. Did you ever see a bread mixer?
No.
It's
For the dough?
like a big pail like that with a big handle on the top. And I used to make, I could make the bread, but my Uncle Johnny, he'd come in and he'd feel sorry for me turning that big thing, and he'd turn it for me. I'd get the bread mixed.
What were your uncles' names?
Ed, Ed, Johnny, and Jim, all the common names.
Did your grandmother ever talk about your grandfather? Do you know anything about what he was like? Or
Not very much.
he'd been gone.
I have a
quite
picture
while.
of him that Eileen Henry got here a few times years ago, when, only 4 or 5 years ago. She sent me a picture of him. And no, I don't know much about him. I don't know what he ever did. I don't know what he was doing. I suppose farming is all.
You wouldn't know particularly why he came to the United States?
No, I wouldn't. Isn't that strange? Nowadays, everybody likes to dig in and find out. But I don't know. I always had the feeling everybody was so glad to come here that they didn't want to talk much about it.
Just better opportunities?
Yeah.
Was your grandmother was she from Ireland too, or?
No. Her folks, I suppose, were, but she was born in New York. She was American born. So I suppose he came over here, and she must have been pretty young when they got married. She was 83 when she died. And she liked to sing. She had quite a pretty singing voice.
Did she have a piano or an organ?
No, they had no instruments. No, my first instrument was an organ. My mother was very progressive, and so the first thing she had, when I was able to, I had to play. She bought an organ, and I had to take lessons. Well, my father played the violin, and
Well, that's right, yeah.
and she liked the music.
You wouldn't really have known either of your father's parents. In other words, your grandparents.
Oh, not much. I know my father's father lived with I believe he lived with my mother and father-in-law. My mother moved in evidently with the McHenry family, but there were 2 maiden sisters, and of course they didn't get along. My mother had to break friendship with them all, and that prevailed all during. I never got a chance to get acquainted with them the way I would like to have. Mother just never was. She wasn't forgiving. She was a strong person, but she, whatever it was, well, they got hurt. You know, young people, all moving. My mother was quite young. And not only that, but really, his brother was there too. She liked his brother all right, and the father was there, lived with him a little bit too. She was just moved in with the family, I guess, on the McHenry farm, part of the McHenry farm.
Mm-hmm.
See, they used to have a lot of land, and then when the men got married, I don't know what they gave the girls. I guess they gave them something. They'd give them a portion of the land as their share,
Oh.
and that there was a house on it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where my mother and father started housekeeping. Well, they moved in with the sisters and
Mm-hmm.
the father. The mother was living too. I don't know where she was living. My grandmother McHenry, I remember her because she smoked a pipe.
Oh yeah,
She was a Scotch woman.
that'd be Sarah Leverty McHenry.
Mm-hmm.
She smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
Do you recall that?
Oh yes, I saw her. I can't. I can only barely remember her.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember. I think my grandfather McHenry must have died before I could. My mother liked him very much, but she didn't get along with the sisters, and they parted company and forever and ever.
Oh no.
She just wouldn't. And I now that's why I got my idea of retaining a little of your contact with your family.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of resent the fact that I didn't have a little contact. When I was getting married, I just didn't seem right not to ask my aunts.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother wouldn't have that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't even share us with them.
So there had been some friction there.
Yeah, yes.
And your mother didn't seem to want to yield on that.
She wouldn't know, and it was sort of interesting when I was getting married, and Abel came up to visit us, and of course he browsed around the town, and my Aunt Nellie used to love to go fishing. Well, he got down towards the lake, or the mill pond, or whatever it was in the town there. I guess it was a lake, a little bit well, anyhow, there was fish there. And she liked to go fishing. She was kind of fat and talkative and all. And the pop went along there, and he met her, and he got to talking to her. And he told her, I guess, who he was, and she told him that I was her niece.
Mm-hmm.
And he came home and told about meeting my aunt.
Uh-huh.
Of course, my mother was kind of surprised. Well, not surprised. She knew that the old lady got around, places and got acquainted. But anyhow, she met him and got acquainted with him.
Uh-huh.
And she would love to
Mm-hmm.
know me better.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. It was funny. Mother liked the men folks, but she didn't like the sisters. My Uncle Ed McHenry, we had always they were always friendly with him. Or that's one little thing in our relationships that I always was disappointed about.
That was kind of painful to you not to be able to see your aunts.
Yeah, I didn't mind it quite then so much, but as I got older, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I hate to see bad family relations.
Mm-hmm.
You can at least share a little something. Anyhow, I went to when those two aunts died. I think I went to the funeral of one of them, and Catherine went. Catherine didn't. She resented the fact that we didn't know our aunts.
Mm-hmm.
She did more than I did towards trying to have a little relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
She was more feisty.
Mm-hmm.
She was more like her mother.
Do you remember your grandmother McHenry's home? Were you in that house?
Well,
also?
that's where we lived. That was the one that burned down.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember that when it burned down?
I remember that night.
What was that night like?
Oh, it was terrible. It was cold and snow, deep snow.
January?
The house was on one side of a road, and the barn was across the road, quite a little distance.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of snow. It was awfully cold. They said 40 degrees. Now, that's awfully cold.
40 degrees below?
Yeah.
Below?
Uh-huh. And I think I've told it before, I had been sick, and I woke up and wanted a drink of water. So my father got up to get me a drink of water. Catherine was a baby. She was very young.
So this would be about when you were
Well,
4?
I wasn't that old. Catherine, I can't remember. It was long in the spring, or like in February or March, somewhere like. Oh, it must have been in January, February. It was very cold. And Catherine, well, she may have been. She was a baby anyhow, in a cradle, and I'm 2 years older than she was. So I was about 3, less than that, about 2.5, I'd say. And anyhow, I wanted a drink of water. So before my father went to bed, he pushed the curtain aside, and here the whole building was ablaze. And they're all in their night. They were very tired. They were sound asleep. I cried, and of course he got up to wait on me, and so with that, of course, I had to get going. Well, my mother had just got my father's over. He had to go to the barn to get the horses across the street. Well, the horses were scared of the flames, and he couldn't leave them a minute. He had to keep them in control, and to get them anywhere near the house so he could pick us up, it was pretty hard to do. And my mother couldn't get out the hallway because there was smoke, too much smoke. So she tried to get out the window from the living room, and pushed the cradle through, and the cradle got stuck in the window. And then I can still see her pushing that cradle, and she jammed it and kicked it and everything else. She had my father's overshoes on and an overcoat. That's all she had on. She got awfully cold, frostbitten. And she gave it such an awful wrench, she finally broke the windows out enough so she got the cradle out.
With Catherine inside?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You wonder how she did it. Of course, they were furious a while, and my father was trying to hold the horses and to get near enough so we could get in.
Mm-hmm.
So from there we went to my uncle's, my Uncle Ed McKinney, who lived on another farm not too far, and from that time on I don't remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
So but I remember that. Mm-hmm. It was a very dramatic thing. They never did know how the house started on fire. Of course, they were trying to keep it warm, but the fires were out. Mm-hmm. They thought maybe the mice started some matches or something that way. You don't know. It was so far advanced by the time he discovered it. The top of the building was on fire. That's why they thought maybe something was in the attic that became inflammable. Maybe the chimney went up through the attic or something that way. I don't know. Never did discover.
It just took the whole house?
Oh yes, every to the ground.
Uh-huh. Now, when your mother pushed Catherine out the window, did she fall? Didn't the cradle fall a distance?
Well, it was on the ground floor, or maybe there was a porch there. I don't know.
Oh,
I think maybe there was a porch there.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember from then on.
Mm-hmm.
But that I could remember. The people ask you what's the earliest memory you have, and it seems as though that was pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't remember much after that, like where we went or what. I remember going into Uncle Ed's house, and my aunt was, I don't know whether she just had a baby or what, and we went into her room, and then that's all I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when you read about those things in books, they are pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
Fire, devastation, storms.